What if the secret to success wasn't just talent or hard work, but unshakable confidence? Welcome to Grasp Confidence, the podcast where visionary thought leaders, speakers, and entrepreneurs unlock the mindset and strategies for lasting success. I'm your host, Tara LaFon Gooch, CEO, two-time best-selling author, and international TEDx speaker, and I can't wait to help you step into the most powerful version of yourself. Let's dive in. In this powerful episode of Grasp Confidence, I have the opportunity to sit down with Besnik, Vrellaku, the founder and CEO of salesflow.com, a breakthrough go-to-market platform transforming how B2B companies generate leads and scale with intention. Besnik's entrepreneurial journey didn't start with a pitch deck or a tech accelerator. It started at the age of 16, flipping merchandise online with grit and curiosity. Since then, he's launched 8+ MVPs, achieved a successful micro exit, and now leads a fully remote global team that serves over 10,000 sales and marketing pros around the world. His company is trusted by names like HubSpot and Monday.com and Launch Darkly. But this episode goes deeper than tech. It's about the mindset, resilience, and leadership it takes to build something that lasts. Besnik will open up about the inner work behind the outer success, the fears, the pivots, the bold decisions that shaped his path. Besnik, welcome to the show.
Tara, my pleasure. Thank you for that introduction.
Absolutely. It's not every day we get to interview someone who has scaled their company to the level that you have. And of course, you're joining us today from London, England. But you've got all of these amazing things happening right now. I would love to hear a little bit about salesflow.io and the success that you guys are having, as well as some of your personal success, if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so salesflow.io is a multi-channel sales engagement platform. What we do is we effectively are the lifeblood of SMEs. We've managed to grow predominantly in the US, even as a London-based business, actually, funnily enough. And one of the core cornerstone things that came about from this true success is naturally the value that it provides to end customers. We're very performance driven. If you're not getting opportunities, leads, and sales pipeline, you are not going to be paying that recurring cost of a subscription. So I think the sort of 10,000 users that we managed to accumulate over being in business for 6+ years, for Salesflow at least, was because of that value. And the reason is why, though. What kind of value is it? The reality is that most SMBs don't have VC funding. They don't always, the coaches, the freelancers, the agencies of the world, never mind the sales team that exist out there. They don't, not everybody's VC backed and are burning money like it's just infinite. So taking a step back, we've managed to create a multi-7-figure business completely bootstrapped. Okay, what that means just with effectively zero money. Me, myself, and the CTO, we managed to do it. Now, the reality though was that when you look back at all the previous ventures that I used to have, 8 MVPs plus, all of them were intentionally and unintentionally failed. As that's a whole different discussion. But all of them had a reoccurring challenge. They were, people didn't have the budget to spend large amounts of money in advertisement. Cold emailing wasn't working just by itself. It was becoming overly saturated. And naturally, cold calling, you need manpower to do that. It's exhausting, never mind a business. So then what we did is we created a multi-channel LinkedIn and email automation combined into a singular system that just provided the results people wanted to see. So that's how it really came about. That's the value piece. And that success came from focusing on that core value piece that nobody else was really doing well enough. That takes security into consideration, takes costs, that's affordable for SMEs, and that in itself allowed us to scale. But obviously it wasn't just the product. The reality is we had so many anchoring or catalyst of opportunities with influencers and partners and doing our own prospecting and sales combined that allowed us to have a trajectory from being completely bootstrapped, zero customers with effectively zero money to, in a space of, even 2 years, our first year, we made, millions plus really, just because of that value add. And normally customers and folks out there that see value spread the word for you. So that with them just, became a glorified version of what a network effect really over time.
Wow, I love that. The flywheel effect, right?
100%.
Yeah. So obviously I've bootstrapped. I know a lot of my friends who own companies have done the same. It's not easy, right? And it's one of the most, I think everybody thinks, "Oh, it's so cute. You start a business, that's cool. I'm going to put it on social media." People don't realize how difficult it is to run a business. I always say that entrepreneurship is the ultimate mirror, ultimate personal development machine. It
Yeah.
shows you who you really are, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. But what an inspirational story to learn that, this business that you started turned into a multi seven figure a year business. And it happened fairly quickly. It sounds like you guys really launched with a lot of success.
Yeah, we no, we did, thankfully, we've had a lot of the timing was just right. Sometimes timing just aligns, and but that was the reality. And I totally agree. Bootstrap businesses are underpraised. You hear more people getting VC money, but the hard-earned cash and money and value, profitability, sustainability is actually a true business.
I love that. And I like how your business incorporates LinkedIn with it as well. I always tell people, the entrepreneurs that I work with, they get overwhelmed. They think they have to be everywhere. And while, I agree with that to a certain extent, if you're going to be good at one thing, that's really where you start. And to me, it starts on LinkedIn. It's the world's largest business to business networking platform there is, and people are accessible. It's a great way to find other folks. And one of the best ways that I have found before reaching out on a cold email or a cold call is actually looking at somebody's LinkedIn profile, doing a little bit of research, finding some commonalities, some areas of mutual interest or something like that, and starting a rapport with somebody. There's nothing like building a relationship with someone because in today's oversaturated world of communication, hello, what stands out is somebody that, takes the time and has, a multi-channel approach to where you meet your customer where they are, right?
100%.
Yes, I love that. Well, I have a sales background, as you might be able to tell.
If you're not selling, what are you doing? Let's be honest here. It's a cornerstone skill of anything.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, you're having all of this incredible success, and congratulations for that. But I'm sure it wasn't always this way. Like I said in my intro, you really started your entrepreneurship journey at the age of 16, flipping online merchandise. I would like to hear a little bit about that and take us back to a time when things looked a little different than what they do now.
Oh wow, I'm hitting 33 now, so my memory at 16 is diminishing. But all I do recall is, e-commerce was a very, very, very new thing at what, maybe 2007, right? Like that was the iPhone came out at that point, so never mind mobile commerce. So I mean, is it there was with those 8 MVPs were between when I was 16 and about 25, basically, and they all had their own journey and timing and everything in between. But really, I started really young, just out of personal circumstances, as an immigrant in the UK. And really, one of the key cornerstone things that came about each one was just being absolutely in love and obsessed with technology. and the things that it brought about. So for me, I was really, really interested in how to leverage tech, be digital first, really at that age. And so, whilst they were micro sort of ventures, some barely even incorporated at that point, but a lot of them all were in technology, some B2C, some B2B. And one of the, I a lot of the work that were MVPs that I've created were all stemmed from the basic book of the Lean Startup really early on. So I actually read that book religiously because it said iterate fast and fail quickly. That's why you see 8 MVPs. They were businesses. Some of them ended up trading, but a lot of them didn't. And I failed them purposefully because I was trying to assess what business model can I go all in with and spend the next 5, 10 years, by the way, because most people realize that, once you're in a business, you started trading, just to pivot, you can pivot, but you really committing to that idea, and to that concept for the next 5 years. So in my mind, I was like, well, hold on a second. I'm not going to go whatever idea at that time, at that moment, and then spend the next 5 years just being obsessed and attached to that singular idea. So I just became incredibly agnostic at solving problems, basically. So each one solved a problem through technology, in short, whether it was renting platform for the UK market, whether it was a university platform for cloud storage for students, whether it was a content marketing automation platform that we had for solving that, which became one that I was going to go ahead with. But like you mentioned, in circumstances didn't happen based on partnerships and a few others. So each MVP tackled different forms, and some were, most of them actually, 70% were intentionally, I would fail because I said, hey, was it scalable enough globally that I wanted to do? Did it have the right pricing strategy and economics to sell? Because some of them you needed to sell, 10,000, 100,000 units before you can make any money. Like then you need the amount of capital. Where are you going to get it from to make it viable? Then you had a technology feasibility. Was it actually easy to create a technology based on the budget that I had at that time? Then the others were based on just the uniqueness or differentiation to actually take it to market. So all these factors played in the creation of MVPs, and MVPs can vary from, hey, can I just create a landing page validated through real based data and customers, or to all the way to actually creating a subset of features that you can actually validate you're taking a next step, really, to say, actually, is this providing enough value? Am I speaking to customers, seeing it? What's the reaction of the market? And others where you go a step further, where you actually launch it, get paying customers, and you evaluate it. So each of them had a stepping stone, sort of almost a subconscious approval process to company creation. And then once a lot of these criteria ended up being met for me, one of those was actually content flow. There's a few others that did well, but circumstances halted it. But others, like sales flow, everything married up correctly. The right CTO, the right tech, the right value proposition, the right timing. And I said, I'm going all in. So then I consciously made that decision, and I knew way ahead of time that it was going to be a success before it even became a success. It sounds cliche, but I really and truly believe that once you have enough data points based on those experiences of 8 MVPs, you've got so much know-how. Pretend you're an AI model. You're getting all this data in your mind to make good judgment calls.
Right.
So that's, I think, the cornerstone learnings that I did. And it happened to be software, basically, because I can sell to the US, I can sell to the rest of Europe. Well, I didn't want to be contingent on a particular location for a lot of different reasons, for scalability, namely. And that's actually how we grew. We ended up actually growing, majority of our business in the US. Because if it was a regional restricted company, then I don't think I'd have the same level of success, if at all. So yeah, perhaps I tracked a little bit, but really that was kind of the core failures there. I mean, of course, the other failures were more to do with not just MVPs, partnerships. So the right partners as committed as yourself. Others in the past have not, for example, for not something that you would want to put people into blame or anything like that, but really it's more circumstances are a really philosophical and timing element of your business. Do certain things align? whilst with the current partner, the CTO, he had a direct interest in the infrastructure for prospecting, and that was like, it's just the circumstance aligned beautifully, but it took, not the ninth one to get to that really. So, if there's anything that I've learned, based on those struggles and failures, is that you have to have enough grit and persistence to can not be obsessed with whatever idea you have, but validate aggressively and consciously.
I love that. So much wisdom out there for any entrepreneur listening, that it's okay to fail. And in order to validate if there is a need for what you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to validate. You have to be willing to stick your neck out there, get your hands dirty, and try something a little scary, right? And a little new, and not be afraid of the outcome. I think too many people, Besnik, they're
Mm,
terrified of failure,
mm,
terrified of rejection. I know a lot of really amazing entrepreneurs that are just so petrified of failure because they're afraid of what people will think of them if and when they do.
mm.
And they're less afraid of pursuing their dreams. What do you think about that?
I want to go back to your point, right? You said business is really hard.
Yes.
Y- y- and I'm so glad you bought it, because the only a true, someone who's really experienced business will just tell you that, and I will still say it. Actually, it is incredibly hard, and maybe my experience and who I am as an individual, maybe personality trait, I don't know what, but if I've met many people who just simply, maybe it's whether the obsession or the fire or the energy, whatever it might be, I don't know, I don't have a study to back it, is somehow able to triumph through it. I don't know whether it's someone with ADHD or AD that seems to triumph through just because of that energy that is required to constantly, it's not just about growth, but problem solving consistently. And I think, for those that are in a position, I think you have to understand what your pain threshold is and stress tolerance, because not everybody is able to actually, because sometimes I know many of people who are earning, what, I don't know, 200, 300K in their careers, and, they're not, completely distorted or traumatized by the world of business that comes with it. You can have a good life, because at the end of the day, we're in business so we can have whether freedom or, the ability to just have this creative adventure that a lot of entrepreneurs seek out. So it depends on the purpose, but and that will then define your failure tolerance, I believe. Because I have met entrepreneurs out there who have, are great innovators, but they're not businessmen. They're
Yeah.
not able to, and for that, like, they're not able to really grow a business. And you talk about sales, by the way. I've spoken to technically, I've advised companies who are just CTO technical leads. They have zero idea about how to adjust pricing strategies and go to market strategies and anything in between, for example. So my advice though is to understand your threshold, in short, because it's sometimes you're better off in a career, you're making up money, and you can have a good life rather than wasting 5, 10 years of your life. Or, hey, if you can get VC money, get a salary, in that case, maybe the VC route is better, because that will reduce your stress kind of tolerance. Maybe, yes, you have pressure, but you have people who are still dictating what you should be doing. But, otherwise, if you have I think to make business not just difficult, but just part of way of life now, to solve daily problems. And now, for me, for instance, my threshold has gone so high that it doesn't even phase me anymore. I don't see them like I used to. Maybe that's just part of the sort of the catalyst of learning, and going into the next level of how you think about things, is no longer just being the only things I stress about, things I can't control. I mean, we had a team in Ukraine and there was a war at one point. I mean, that's excruciating stress in different ways, but that's not just business. That's just things you can't control, right? But the things that you can control, I think you can overcome failures or extreme level of stress um, by just being obsessed by what you do. And I think that's the way path. I mean, a lot of people out there, not just myself. I mean, who am I? I'm not some guy out there that's in, all these. But what I've learned and resonated with people is that you have to be obsessed with what you love. And I think that's those folks that are so, then it doesn't become a pain anymore. It's just a part of the experience that you have in this business journey, ultimately. And shocker, and if you're into philosophy and read on, we're all going to die anyway. So, like, you might as well make sure you do what you love, in short. So I think that's what I would say is that, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks, younger generations and older generations, also your appetite for risk taking is much higher when you're between 16 and maybe 30 or more. I don't know what your circumstance. I lived rent free, right? When I used to be, back home living with parents, and I used to experiment like wildfire, for example, because I didn't have the burden. If I do fail, maybe I can't pay my mortgage or beyond. So I think I understand the folks that are in the careers, maybe have kids. The risk is just so much higher, if things don't work out. So I think the best thing to always, what I would advise to folks is, if you're in that bracket of younger generation, is leverage that point of, you'll learn a lot more than working for any, Tom, Dick, or Harry in a corporate job, is actually do it at the beginning, really early on. Get some experience and exposure from an organizational discipline perspective, but thereafter, I'd say just spend the 5 years minimum in your 20s. Just experiment like wildfire. Live in your parents' rent free if you can. Not everybody can, but or live cheaply. Like, why would you want to live that flamboyant life? Get a WeWork pass for $200 and work there. So the alternatives for those that are worried about failure, I think, then how are you managing your savings in business? Like,
Mhm.
where is that threshold where you have to back out? So now, instead of having 5 MVPs available to you, call it 5 chances of success, you now have two in your 30s. So I would just ensure that, but you should, at 30 plus, you should probably have enough experience to also have better judgment than a 20-year-old, right? So your chance of success are higher, in fact. But your chances of pivoting the amount of capital that you have are lower. So I would say that, just that's where the threshold I would add, for based on circumstances and age and experience. And maybe there's a lot more, but that just the sort of the first thing that comes to mind.
I love that. It's so powerful because I think so many of us, they may look at somebody like you, Besnik, and they may say, "Oh, it must be nice, right? He must have just landed on this thing and it happened overnight." We often don't see the precursors to these things. We often don't see the sleepless nights. We often don't see the person in their parents' basement saving every single penny and putting every single penny back into a business and not actually earning an income. I've been there. One of the interesting things in my journey, when I left my corporate sales career, I left with nothing.
Mm.
Nothing. I had a company car, so I didn't have a car. No insurance, no car, no salary, no nothing. I didn't even have a laptop. I had zero, right?
Mm.
So I started with nothing. And for me, that was actually a good place. And I do think it has to do with personality, kind of like what you were mentioning. It has to do with a risk tolerance. And for whatever reason, I have a very high risk tolerance. I like taking risks.
Yeah.
It excites me. If I'm not taking a little bit of risk, I get bored really easily.
Yeah, me too.
So that's like one of those, like, you too, right? That's one of those recipes, you're supposed to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You like taking risks or else you get bored. One of my core values is freedom. That means I can't really work in a tight little structure in a box. It's just not my personality.
Mm.
I like to have my own signature and package and way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I think if we can all just take that time to figure out these things about ourselves, I think our chances of success would be a lot higher. And it doesn't mean that failure is not going to happen, but when it does, it's just a learning opportunity. I mean, I've failed plenty of times. I've had failed partnerships in business
Yeah.
a lot, right? I've started a couple businesses that absolutely went nowhere. And you know what? I'm proud of all of it because it led me to the point I am today. And it sounds like you had the same story.
100%. No, from zero, I'll tell you that much, so I can totally resonate. And kudos to you too, by the way. It's amazing when I hear this similar stories, because it's just like such a it's such a great moment of life goals. Life is meant to be interesting, and to have go for that journey, it just makes it more exciting. As a if you were to simulate life and how you would want to trajectorize and how you want to do, it's like the perfect way to go about it, right? But yeah, 100% partnerships, circumstances, this and that, everything in between, and sometimes if it doesn't work, you're better off cutting your losses short and moving on to the next thing or the next partner, or the next thing. Otherwise, you don't want to be stuck into a business you do not are not obsessed with for the next 5, 10 years.
I love that. It has to be something you are obsessed with.
Yeah.
And you have to be obsessed with solving other people's problems. And I think if we can all be obsessed with solving other people's problems, solving their problems in business, what are their problems in their personal life? Whatever your business model is, whatever your product or service is, be obsessive
Yeah.
about it. And if you're obsessive, it shows through your passion, it shows through your work ethic, it shows through your dedication.
Yeah.
Nothing gets in your way. And all of a sudden, the more obsessive you are, the more you also say, no, I'm not going to that party, or no, I can't do this, or you know what, I'm going to work a little bit extra here and there and there. And, a lot of this success that we're talking about is built in the dark. It's built when nobody's watching,
Yeah.
right? I
Absolutely.
always I always say that roots grow in the soil for a reason. They're in the dark. Nobody can see the roots, but that's where the power lies. That's your foundation, right? What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, it's just a mirror of my own experience, to be honest, right? So I think there's a resonating theme there. It's that, like, I can put it better in words myself, Tara. I would say, like, ultimately, like, you are in charge of your own outcomes in life, and if you realistically, find ways to discipline yourself based on how it's based on how obsessive you're becoming about what you want to do effectively. So I totally agree. I mean, I think those were excellently put. I mean, I mean, I used to, because I grew up in Oxford, and I used to go to some of the local universities as my office. I used to, I can afford to even 200 at that point. So I used to compromise there. If I had laptops and other resources, how else am I gonna leverage my because I didn't, no, I don't work from home typically. So I wanted to be in an environment where I can just focus, even if I had in my environment putting pressure in me to so I don't, go on my phone. That's the basics, and do this,
Mhm.
be distracted by Y and Z. So it's small things like that that you have to first create the environment that you want to be in, where you can actually just be productive and get work done. So totally agree.
I love that. Any final words of wisdom for somebody starting a business or who's been in a business for a while that's just not quite scaling the way they want it to, Besnik? Anything that you can think of for someone?
Do you know what? Since there's two personas there, two very different advice, I would say. One would be for those that are starting out, experiment like wildfire seems to be like my sort of reoccurring mention, because I really do believe that. And I think if you do not validate quick enough, do not go for it, or you're not confident enough to have people who want to pay before you even build the product, before you invest. So I would say that, to be honest. Now you have tools like Lovable and Replit and Cruiser and all that. Now in the AI, I mean, I didn't have it. I had to invest, 50,000 a pop to try and get particular MVP out. And now it's like, what, you're paying $20, $30 a month to create an MVP, by the way. So use that tech wise, right? Everything is tech enabled, really, unless it's like some kind of B2C hardware company, in which case, probably worth skipping this podcast, because help too much then. But uh, otherwise, for someone who's looking to scale, has got a business, they've got 100,000 customers, they wanted to go. I think then it just becomes about people. Like after hiring hundreds of people over time, and managing a team of 35 plus people in the company that we have, for example, like everything now stems about other people, and about for you to be able to anchor in somebody, take a bet. Now you're no longer betting the business being successful. Now at that point, if you're looking to scale up, you're betting on people. So find ways in and find and source yourself or with others to find particular people that know they're going to be catalysts to get you to where you need to go. So I think really betting on people really and learning about people and human resources and talent starts to become such a big priority. And I've learned this and burnt my fingers a lot of times based on people. Actually, we could have been double to where we even are, or maybe even less, actually, if I didn't have the current team that I have. Because I love my team now, right? Absolutely blessed with them. But in the past, terrifying. Things really stagnated because of the team and because of their ability to actually support the business. Once you get the right team in place, they will care for you and the business and everything in between. Then that will make a big difference. So my to those scaling up, you've just you study your ability to hire.
I love that. It's great advice. Where can everybody find and connect with you and learn more about you and your company?
So yeah, well, I suppose I'm always on LinkedIn, posting a lot, Tara recently. So Besnik Relaku, I'm pretty sure I'm like probably the only one with that first and last name. So you
Same.
can
You're classic.
right. So if you can spell it or memorize it, but find me on LinkedIn, follow, connect. Otherwise, if you're talking about go-to-market strategies, you're looking to, it's the whole purpose of Salesflow. It's a GTM tool. We're not gonna, you don't need a mortgage to sign up. We have free accounts, free trials that you can go on, test it. But really, we have a lot, mainly, we do huge amounts of resources on Salesforce. So /resources, you can get guides and growth hacks and growth marketing that you'll need to grow your business just based on other things beyond just prospecting. So those two places would be the options.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Besnik, for being an amazing guest on the show and for sharing your wisdom about how to grow and scale a company with intention and confidence. And thank you so much for everyone who tuned into this episode today. Guys, don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, and leave a review. Each review helps more listeners see the value of tuning in. And I hope you will encourage more people around the world to do the same. We will catch you in the next episode, everyone. Take care.